Hello everyone, my name is Adam, I'm the Community Manager for Space Scum, and welcome to our Devlog series. Are you enjoying the demo? If you didn't know, we just launched our first public demo and added a ton of new content. While we have teased most of this content in the past, we realized we hadn't actually sat down and explained why we added these features to the game. So let's dive in. We've always wanted Space Scum to be vast and open. You were never meant to be stuck on one planet forever. We have taken the first steps towards making the Space Scum universe by building the systems to generate multiple planets, allow basic travel between them, and all the while making sure your saves persist throughout your journey. This is why we added our first ice biome to the demo. We wanted to see how players interact with a two-planet setup and make sure our systems are working as intended. When you land on the ice planet, you'll likely notice we've added some new creatures, items, weapons, and subtle terrain differences. Rest assured, this is just the beginning. In future updates, we're going to ensure it won't be viable to just sit on one planet for an entire playthrough, as we'll be adding events, curveballs, and challenges. For example, for a set period, you may have a civil war breakout, or maybe a pandemic is underway. Or perhaps the Imperial Emperor is hosting EmpFest 3021, and trust me, you don't want to miss that. We're also working on a bounty system, where as you take contracts and work in the criminal underworld, your heat level will rise, and the world will become increasingly hostile towards you. This will force players to think strategically about which planets they should visit, and for how long based on world events and their bounty level. Some more good news. One of our current environmental systems is already complete. When you land on the ice planet and open your inventory, you will likely notice that several of your Space Scum have a red warning symbol above their character. This means that their clothing or armor is not suitable for the planet's harsh conditions, and it will negatively impact their action points in combat. The oppressive atmosphere of the ice planet is just the first stage of our planetary game system. We want players to think about what kit they should use on certain planets. For example, you may have a toxic planet that requires hazmat suits, or another planet with no atmosphere at all, and thus requiring full-fledged spacesuits. The reason why we're adding this climate system is because we want to move away from your stereotypical armor development as, ooh, this armor is epic and has the highest number. I'm going to wear this forever. Granted, we could do that, but we believe that gaming is an adventure, and we want you to think about where you're going and pack accordingly. We hope to see players add depth to their ship's inventory. You may have an amazing armor piece, but is that really going to help in the frozen wasteland? Or would a lighter piece of gear serve you better so you can perform more actions in combat? As of this demo launch, we're taking the first steps towards a full faction system in Space Scum. You'll be encountering slave traders, mega corporations, and weird religious cults. Keep in mind though, this is the early days of our new system. And as sci-fi fans, we believe that it's the characters and creatures that bring a sci-fi universe to life. In the final form of our faction system, we hope to have individuality for each faction that changes how they communicate, the missions they provide, and the troops you'll encounter on the battlefield. Interfactional relationships. Some factions will naturally hate each other and could potentially start a civil war on the planet. If you play your cards right, you just might profit from the chaos. More importantly though, which side would you choose? Faction development. The player won't just develop a relationship with a faction, but that faction could play a large role in their playthrough and on the planet. For example, one faction could eliminate another and thus become the dominant force on a planet, which would impact trade, quests, and more. Alright, now let's discuss something our fans of Honey, I Joined a Cult have been requesting for Space Scum since the game's announcement. Customization. We know that players would spend hours customizing their cult, trying to determine what their god should be called, their relic, and their outfits for the cultists. While we haven't reached that level of detail yet in Space Scum, you can now at least name your gang and give them a fancy symbol. This is still a work in progress and complements the ability to choose your origin and quest. After all, if you're going to rule the criminal underworld of the galaxy, you need to be taken seriously with a proper name and gang sign. Now for those of you just joining the world of Space Scum for the first time, we've added a surprise for you. And that is telegraphed attacks. One thing we want to guarantee in combat is that players can't just sit in one spot and shoot their problems away, which would lead to boring gameplay. We don't want this. By adding attacks to the bile husks, we're hoping to create some rather interesting combat problems for players to solve. This is just a test though, as we're monitoring how players interact with bile husks, and we hope to bring this sort of attack pattern to enemy grenades next. Telegraphed attacks should in theory become fairly common among well-armed humanoid mobs. similar to energy shields. As always, we'll be sure to collect feedback, as we don't want every mob to have a telegraphed attack, and we want a variety of behaviors for our enemies in Space Scum. Now before we wrap up today's devlog, we have some additional updates to share. First off, Steam Deck now works. We had a random Game Maker extension that was bugging out, and once we saw that, we were really surprised at how well Space Scum ended up running. So if you have a chance, give Space Scum a try on the Steam Deck. Also, lots of icons have been updated to be more consistent with the new art style, and the last of the old blue user interface is gone. And we have much more in store for you. Thank you so much for watching our latest devlog for Space Scum, and we'll see you in the Space Scum demo. Enjoy.